Right, good morning, everybody. I'm just introducing this session. The session is from the Cheshire Constabulary, the police force locally, and it'll be about opportunities within the police force. My name is Andrew Whitmore, and I'm a careers consultant in the University of Keele. And what I'll be doing is picking up queries from our Cheshire colleagues here. And if you have any questions that you want to ask immediately, feel free to do that, but there will be a question and answer section at the end. We're going to start this session with a video from Cheshire Police. So can we run that now, please?
Thank you for playing the video that we've provided. So my name's Andrew Miles. I'm one of the HR resourcing officers at Cheshire Constabulary. Joined today with my colleague Melissa Davis, one of the HR assistants in the recruitment and promotion teams. So we hope that you'll find the event useful, and you'll get a lot of information that potentially you won't already know about the force and about the recruitment processes when joining Cheshire Police. So what we're going to talk about today, so we'll cover the police constable route. So there's two routes through that which we'll cover. We'll touch upon the police community support officer and the communications operators within the force control centre, and then we'll touch upon some staff opportunities that are available, including the special constabulary, and then provide you with some hints and tips into showing the best for your application and interview stages. As at the force, we are different than the vast majority of organisations in how we assess candidates at the interview stage and also on our application process as well.
Andrew, you've already got a couple of questions coming in, and I'll mention them now because you might be able to add them to that list. One is about work experience that you would recommend for people wanting to be a police officer. So that's worth adding to your section when you talk about getting to be police constable. And the next one is about electric vehicle fleets. So perhaps you might want to cover that when you talk about the fleet side of things.
Yes, I can touch upon both of them.
Brilliant. Thanks.
Now, really. So at this stage, work experience-wise, we say to join as a constable, you'd need no prior knowledge of policing. Obviously, you could look at joining the special constable route, which is a voluntary route within the policing, and that will give you an insight into what the policing is like, what you're likely to be involved with as a regular officer. So you'll work alongside regular officers as a special constable. But like I say, no prior experience is needed to be a police officer. You know, we've had people apply straight out of university. We have people apply from customer service backgrounds, and we have people in our own department that have applied as well. So, you know, they might have that insight into some of the policing terminology, but they actually have never been on the front line. So again, it makes no difference for work experience-wise as to what you've got. And you will get the required training during the process. So we will touch upon all the training that you'll get a little bit later on. But it's 16 to 18 weeks within the training team, which are people that are experienced officers that'll be able to give you all the knowledge that you need to serve you on day one of being out on the area or within the community. And then you'll also be you'll have a tutor constable, so someone that will support you going through your first 2 years as a police constable, and they'll be able to, like I said, just provide you insights, information, and best practices to be able to provide the best quality service to the community that we serve. So hopefully that answers the question. Now, with regards to fleet, we do have our own fleet service within force based in Winsford, and again, there are opportunities to join the fleet team. It just depends as and when they're recruiting. Unfortunately, they don't have anything available at this present moment, but you know, opportunities do come up quite quickly within the force. If you think we're always, you know, Boris Bobby's the amount that he wanted in 20,000. We've always recruiting for officers, and we always need to ensure that the vehicles, the equipment that the officers have is up to standard for them to be able to go about their day-to-day roles. So with that, you know, the likely opportunities, like I say, can come up quite quickly. I think there's a little, we've got a link at the front of the presentation slide that just says where to find the vacancies within the force. What I'd suggest is registering on that site, and it'll give any opportunities that come up, it'll then give you a notification, and it might be something that interests you, or it might be something within fleet that you can then look to apply for.
Andrew, I think the questioner was really interested in the sustainability side within the police force, whether you had a sustainability team, and they might be doing environmental science, I don't know, but that might be an interesting area.
Oh, apologies. Sorry, it's quite difficult.
The two things are linked actually to the electric vehicle fleet side of things.
Yeah, so we don't. I'm not actually aware of a team that we have with the sustainability side of the vehicle management and you know, within the police. Again, you know, times are changing. We're adapting to these changes. So whether that's something that the chief constable looks to bring in, it'd be their sort of decision whether we were to put a team in place. But again, I think if we were to, it'd be heavily promoted on our web pages and through our social media platforms as well.
That's great, thanks.
But like I say, the best probably bit of advice I can say at this stage, if you're considering a role within the constabulary, is to just register online, and then you'll get the notifications that come through about potential roles that may interest you. Okay, so as mentioned, we were going to touch upon the police constable route. So being a police constable, it is an exciting and rewarding career with the chance to explore academic and vocational opportunities. So you're front line of the criminal justice system. So really, what will you be required to deal with? You can be required to deal with numerous incidents, whether that be crime, missing people, family feuds, child abuse, community tensions, sudden deaths. That list can go on. No 2 days for a police constable are the same. And then people look for our officers for guidance and protection. To provide this effectively, you'll need to be able to see things from their perspective, tailoring your approach to address their particular needs and fears. So, we'll touch upon it a little bit later when we say about how we assess applicants, but we use a competencies and values framework, and that really then fits in with being emotionally aware, but not just emotionally aware to your own emotions, as we mentioned then, it's to the community that you're serving. We mentioned that you could be potentially going to sudden deaths. Well, it's tailoring your approach to that family at their time of need. And ultimately, with a police force, we're called when they need us. So it could potentially be, like you say, that sudden death, and it's the worst thing that could happen. They call the police, and we've got to be able to tailor our approaches no matter what we're called out to. So as a police constable, you'll work as part of a team under general supervision, but a lot of the time you will operate independently. Many specialist teams that you can join, so you'll be required to complete a 2-year probation period, and then upon that you can look to explore different routes within the police force. So during the first 2 years you'll be on as a response officer, so that'll be dealing, as you see, driving around, dealing with your 999 calls. That is pretty much your response officer. But after that, you can look to go into criminal justice and custody. You can also be a force incident manager within the force control room. Forensics you can join, force intelligence, the major investigations team. We've got roads policing, serious organised crime, public protection. Again, the list is pretty much endless as to the opportunities that are within policing, and that within Cheshire Police, we also work as part of collaborations. We have a Triforce collaboration with Merseyside and North Wales, and we also have a counter-terrorism police in North West, which we work with Cumbria, GMP, Merseyside and Lancashire. So again, it's a lot of cross-border working, and there's opportunities for you to get involved with should you want to progress or come into a more specialised post during your service at police. And you also work in partnership with public and other organisations, making a difference to the local community. And as we mentioned previously, you have a key role to play in supporting victims, witnesses, and providing reassurance to those that have been subject to crime and antisocial behaviour. So what we sort of say a police constable will require, sort of like following the attributes that a police constable will require. Look for honesty and integrity. Look for a good level of physical fitness, and that will be tested prior to you joining the force. And you are required to keep that up throughout your time as an officer of Cheshire Constabulary. About good communication skills and tailoring your communication skills to different people, different communities, have that drive and determination, have rational decision making. Your decisions can be scrutinised, but it's about knowing that the decision you've made is the best possible decision at that given time. Decisions can always change when new and further information does come to light, but if you can provide that rationalisation as to why you're making that decision, it prevents obviously scrutiny later down the line. And that ability to work independently and as part of a team. So you could be out on the streets patrolling on your own, or you could be in the, say, major investigations team or criminal justice, dealing with a ongoing investigation where there's a team of 4 or 5 of you, all dealing with that same investigation. So as a police constable, we have 2 routes within the Cheshire Constabulary that you can look to join. So we have a relatively new route. I say relatively new, it's probably been around for about 18 months now, but it's a degree apprenticeship. So this is an opportunity open to all, even if you've got a degree, don't have a degree, the constabulary will pay for you to have a further degree or to gain a qualification with that degree. So this is a 3-year program initially. That coincides with the length of a undergraduate degree, and you'll be employed as a police officer from day one, gaining valuable experience of the role alongside studying towards your degree. Again, as you'll be earning, there's no need to take out student loans. That'll be covered. Hopefully, you'll be able to cover the day-to-day costings of your university with that income that you're receiving, and that's about £25,000 that you'll get per year. And essentially, with that, you'll have day-to-day responsibilities as well as on-the-job practical training and academic work all at the same time. So it is quite a lot and quite a challenging route into policing. But again, we hope by covering the cost of your degree that you'll continue within the force for a substantial amount of time, that then you'll potentially want to specialise within certain roles, and then that'll just improve the service that Cheshire can offer to the communities that we serve. And then the second route is a little bit more of a traditional route. So it's the initial police learning and development programme, and this is 18 weeks initial training based at headquarters before being posted to a local policing unit. So we currently have 8 local policing units dotted around Cheshire, and you can be posted to any one of them 8. So you'll serve a 2-year probation period as opposed to the 3-year route that was just mentioned. And you'll have, with both of them as well, you'll also have the ability to progress through the ranks within force. So if you don't want to specialise, but you want to stay on response, we have response sergeants, you can go into an inspector role, up to chief inspector, and you continue to progress through, and that they are things that are run internally within the constabulary and fully supported. You will be fully supported throughout that process should you go for it. So process for both of them, you'll be required to complete an application form. Should you be successful at the application stage, you'll then be invited to an online assessment centre. These used to take place face-to-face, but given the current pandemic and climate, we have moved to an online assessment centre. And so that'll be 4 stages to that online assessment centre that you'll be required to complete. And once you start one stage, you are required to complete that stage before you're in one sitting. Should you then be successful at that stage, you'll be invited to an interview in force, and this will be scored against the competencies and values framework. So I guess probably that is really a lot of the information within the role of a police constable, and a bit of an insight as to the process that we have within force. Has anyone got any questions, or is there any questions that have come up on that?
Nothing specifically. There was a question slightly diversified, and I think you're going to be covering it. So there's a question about specialised positions in addition to being a police officer. Do you need to go through the police officer route to reach the more specialist roles? So you might want to say a bit about what happens. I know you covered the early years. Or would it be possible to have a more direct entry into a specialised role if you've completed a postgraduate degree in the relevant field? Quite a lot in that. Do you want me to repeat it again? You okay?
No, you're all good.
Good.
So we've just closed a fast track detective route, but with also that obviously allows you to specialise as a detective. But with all roles, you are required to complete either your 2 or 3 year probation period on response before going down a specialist route. That's just to give you that policing background knowledge and understanding as well.
What other specialist things are there after your 2 or 3 years then?
Okay, so you can look at joining criminal justice and custody, force intelligence, major investigations, roads policing, serious organised and crime, public protection. So that can be like your dedicated rape unit, forensics. Trying to think of all. You can also join like the senior officer team. So you can go and work alongside you can work with the chief constable and the assistant chief constable, the deputy chief constable. So you can also be within their team as well to give you that insight as to potentially what they go out or they may be required to deal with and the scrutiny that they're under. That is, there's so many different. You can also join the training team as well. So after your 2 years, if there's a post available, you can join the training team. Now training changes between your initial training. So during that sort of 18 weeks, you could be training potential new recruits, or you could look at the personal safety training as well. So, if you were interested in the personal safety side of it, you could look to join that team as well. So we have our own training centre within the Constabulary, and there's other units as well. So we've got the Armed Alliance unit, we've got the Dogs unit as well. Both of them you can look to go into as well. So the Armed Alliance will be like your firearms units, and then again we'd work within partnership with North Wales Policing for that.
There's a sort of follow-up question to that one, Andrew, which just come in, is what options are there for master's students? So presumably these are people who've done masters in something relevant. What was the earlier question about? This person said that if they got a postgraduate degree in a relevant field was the previous question, and this one was about whether specific opportunities for people with master's qualifications. I don't know whether there are.
Unfortunately not. You realistically, as a police constable, you have your one. So we require as a base candidates to have 2 A levels, A star to C, and that is the minimum to progress your application any further. Obviously, going on from that, if you've got a master's or undergraduate, it obviously is going to enhance your knowledge if it's in a relevant field, and potentially, once you've completed, say, your 2-year probation, if that is a really specialised master's and you go into that team, yes, you'll probably be working with people that are a little bit more experienced on the job, but you'll have that different way of thinking than what they might be used to working a certain way. But by the previous qualifications and your previous experience, you may bring something really new and different to that team, and it could, again, probably most of the time we'll go back to this, but it's enhancing that service that we do provide to the community. So if we can give victims and witnesses the best possible service, ultimately it's time and need when they're calling us. So we need to be, providing the good. It's very similar. It's not a customer service, but it sort of is, in a way. You need to be providing that great quality of service so that the victims and witnesses do feel like they've been supported through the process that they're going through, because ultimately it's not going to be something that they want to go through.
Thanks, Andrew. Someone's just asked a question, which is, well, how about opportunities in online surveillance? Is that a route through the police constable route, or is it something you recruit directly in?
Again, the vast majority, there are staff opportunities within like investigations, but realistically, like the online, that's linking in with like the serious organised crime unit, so like your social media, online platforms, and looking at the crimes from within that. A lot of that is done within the serious organised crime unit and the major investigations team. So whilst there are police officer opportunities, there are also staff opportunities in a lot of these departments. But again, so for staff, there's no entry requirement for most roles. there are some where you do need a certain level of qualification. So it might say level 5, which is your undergraduate degree. So you obviously have that, and then again your masters potentially could be something a more senior role that you could go into, which requires a level 7, which would be your masters, which then you could utilise and give you that opportunity to go for them roles where not everyone will be able to.
Yeah, I think I've seen students with kind of masters in forensic related areas or sort of the technology side of forensics. So that might, I don't know what the individual's background is, but that could be related.
Yeah, so with our with our forensic team, there are, it's not just, you don't have to be a police officer to join that team. You can be as a staff role within that department. The head of forensics is a staff post.
Right. Okay. I'll finish at that point because there's no more questions yet, but we'll probably will be as you go on.
Okay.
Thanks, Andrew.
No, thank you. So as you touched upon ways that you can get into policing if you're unsure about being a police constable, you have your special constables. So they, like we mentioned, your volunteer role. You can do that alongside your current or any current job that you may have, or alongside your studies. We also have police community support officers, and they are there to support the frontline police. And you'll be working with them as police community support officer. You'll be working at the heart of the community, operating alongside the police officers, and being a visible and reassuring presence on the streets. Engaging with the local community, providing reassurance, working with the local community to tackle issues of local concern, engaging again with the community, dealing with antisocial behaviour, and you are, as a police community support officer, that first line of crime prevention. If you can get that rapport with the community, if they're the ones that are living within the community day in, day out, they're likely to, well, if you've got that good rapport, they can potentially provide you with information that can help deal, like the investigations team, close an investigation or give them more evidence to support in their investigation. So it's a really community, as a role, it's a community focused role, but it's so much that the work that the police community support officers do has a wide impact on the work that police officers and the investigations team are able to do. And as you said, it's a lot of the local community engaging, going to events, setting up events. A lot of the police community support officers have their own social media platforms. So again, you'd be managing things like that and just encouraging the community to come out to these events and showing that visible presence as a community support officer. So away from sort of the frontline sort of policing roles, we have communication operators in the force control room. So this is where you'll be handling both the 999 emergency calls and the 101 emergency calls, that are as diverse as the community we serve. And so you'll be thinking on your feet whilst providing reassurance, enabling you to determine the correct deployment of appropriate police response as necessary. So when calls come in, the skills that we ask from community support communication operators are to have compassion, to have patience, professionalism, resilience, a confident decision maker, and a team player. With the community support communications operator, you'll be required to submit an application form against the competencies and values framework, and that framework can be found on the Cheshire Constabulary's careers page. You'll then be invited to, should your application be successful, you'd be invited to a online assessment just to see how you perform, taking the calls. Again, no prior knowledge is required for any of these online assessments. It's about you, and there's like judgment tests really. It's about how would you deal with that judgment. Then you'll be invited to an interview should you pass the online assessment centre, and then should you pass your interview, be invited, be offered a post within the Constabulary. As a communications operator, it is shift work, and all the roles that we've touched upon are shift work. So that will be working weekends, working holidays, festive holidays. But again, there's a lot of the team in that department and in all the roles really within the Constabulary that are there to support you and help each other along. So obviously deal with the calls and deal with the community and support the community as best as we can. So moving a little bit more on to sort of support roles within staff. So we have help desk officers. These are staff. It's called an officer, but it's a staff role. And these are at the ones that are at the front desk of your local station. So for Winsford, the headquarters is different from the police station, and we'll have help desk officers there because people may just want to hand in some lost property or report a crime, and they'll be able to go to that front help desk officer and report that, which will then be passed over to the police officer or the police community support officer that's available at that time. We'll have crime scene investigators. As we touched on, we have our own fleet service. We have a legal team, it's an in-house legal team. We have corporate communications, so dealing with the vast majority of the social media and any articles that need to go out into the public domain. We have HR, variety of work streams within HR. So you've got your recruitment and promotions, you've got your well-being, and you've got your training and like learning and development. We have our own IT team within Force, and then we have purchasing, accounts, and procurement. So if you're looking at finance, if you're looking at more of a finance background, there are opportunities there as well within the Force to obviously join. So for all like staff roles, we assess against, again, the competencies and values framework. What I'd say is if you are considering a staff post, just to get yourself familiar with that framework, it just gives you that evidence there, and it gives you that insight as to what the panel that marks your application will be looking for. Should your application be successful, you'll be invited again to an interview. Now, this is an interview again on the same framework, and potentially you'll be in front of 2 or 3 people. They will ask you questions, which can be things like a time when. So tell me a time when you have done, they'd be looking for you to provide an example of what you've done and how your thought process when you've gone through that example, and then look at, to enhance your application or evidence, look at what learnings you took from that. We mark on a scale for our interviews of 1 to 5. So if you're hitting all the values and competency areas within the DVF, the panel are going to be then looking at how much information you provided. You've got a structure to your interview. We recommend the STAR L structure, and just looking at that and bringing that to the table on your interview. So if you're giving everything, the panel can only score what you say, so they can't think, oh, you meant this. If they don't write it down, then they're not able to score you afterwards on what you've said. So we always say, just give us everything when you're in that interview. No matter how simple you think, oh, they'll know what I mean, treat it as the panel don't know what you mean. Likewise, going back as well, that is the application process as well. Think about, you've got to be displaying, you'll have a word count, but be displaying as much as you can within that word count. The panel then aren't missing bits. You're not jumping from one example to another, and really go into depth in the examples that you are providing.
Andrew,
and also, if they're asked,
I think a lot of students will know what STAR L is, but probably a lot won't. Do you want to just explain that acronym?
Yeah, I can do.
Just in case.
Yeah, sorry, just bear me 2 seconds. Okay, so with your start out, you're looking at your situation. So obviously, what did you experience? Look at describing look at it as a way of like the environment that you're describing. So that really gives that panel the background information and puts your experience that you've gone through into context. So the T, we look at the task. So ultimately, what is it you were required to do? So it may be a project itself that you're required to complete. It may be something like a presentation that you had to deliver. Look at the problems that arose in any of them. You know, were you working in a team? Were any personal differences within that team? I know myself, I've gone through university myself, how it's not always as easy to get everyone together and working on a presentation to be able to present that. So what were the challenges that you overcome? Really touch upon them as well. And then action. When addressing your action, think about what you did. So we just touched on a little bit of that there, but what did you do to resolve the problem and then ultimately perform the task that you had set in front of you? And then think, what I'd always say is, a lot of people go down the we route. So we did this, we did that. Always come across as I did this, I did that. The panel wants to know, the shortlisting panel and the recruiting manager want to know that you did it. You know, even if it maybe was a bit of a team thing, just make sure you just put in your I. I'll then give the panel that confidence as well in you and your abilities to deal with that situation that you've faced with. So result is the R. So think about how your actions affected the outcome. So if you touched upon delivering a presentation, you know, were you able to deliver that presentation in the end? Were you able to deliver that project? I know quite a lot of people do like dissertations within university. Maybe there's research that you were required to do. So if you were to touch upon that, were you able to submit your dissertation, you know, on time? And how do you know what you did made a difference? So if not everyone's pulling their weight to deliver a presentation or to support in a presentation, how have what you've done with your action affected the end result? You know, would you have passed that presentation had you not have made that action? And then your L, and it's just probably within the constabulary, I'd probably say it's probably one of the biggest things that we like candidates to touch upon, and that is your learning. So what did you learn from that process that you've just gone through, and how can that be applied elsewhere? Also think about any sharing of learning and knowledge that you did throughout that process. So if you're in one team, have you then for another presentation moved on to another team to deliver it? And is there anything that you've learned from the first time that you've then inputted into that second team to prevent any issues arising later down the line? Obviously, you've got to then think as well about the time practicalities and how that impacts. Ultimately, you set end date of when your presentation or project needs to be done. Well, then how does making sure that you have everything in place hit that end goal? So always have that as well in the back of your mind that you are working to that end goal, and that will then show within the panel that are marking your application that you can manage multiple priorities and reach deadlines and be efficient in reaching them deadlines.
Thanks, Andrew. That's great. It's an acronym that we all use, but sometimes not everyone knows it. So I thought I'd better get an explanation.
Yeah, no worries. So I guess really from our point of view, that is a lot of the vacancies and a lot of the information that we have on tips into joining the constabulary. Now, like I say, if you are considering any role within the organisation, do make sure you become familiar with the competencies and values framework. Again, that is on the Cheshire Police website, and that'll give you a head start as to against anyone else when you're looking to put your application in, because it will be assessed against that. So if you know what you're being assessed against, ultimately you can provide your evidence against that assessment criteria. Likewise for your interview, think of examples. So if you've been asked a time when, you say what you did. And if you're asked a question, maybe how would you, think about what you would do and how you would deal with that situation. But then what I'd say is that to support your evidence, that you actually provide an example as well of a time when you have done what you're saying you've done. And then that is also where you can bring that L in that we touched upon with star L, to show your learnings from that situation. So you might say what you did or what you will do, and then go on to what you did, and then why what you did has impacted what you will do going forward, to support your evidence. Again, it's everything that we do is on a rating scale of 1 to 5 when we mark. So we're looking for exceptional evidence to be provided and to be hitting them 5s. If you can hit them 5s, ultimately, if there's one post, there could potentially be 10 to 20 people that have applied for that same role. So you want to give yourself that best chance from day one when you're going through an application and an interview. The panel also as well, they will stop you during your interview and ask you questions. Don't be ever put off by this. The panel might think you're waffling and want to bring you back on track, or the panel might think, I know what you're saying, but if we can get a little bit more out of you as a candidate, we could potentially be looking at them higher scores because you'll give us that extra information that we may not be aware about. Also, if you are going to use any like abbreviations, always make sure that you just say what they are, because we have it with police officers that come for promotion processes and specialised roles that will use an abbreviation. But if you've got a member of staff in, so say someone from HR may potentially not know that abbreviation. So if you're looking at something from an outside organisation coming in, there might be an abbreviation that you use, but they won't be aware of what it means. So just spend that time and it is only a quick 5-10 seconds as to what that abbreviation is, that'll just enhance your evidence, and it'll stop the panel from losing track of where you're at. So I guess really from our side, that is the end of our presentation. So I guess if you've got any questions, please just fire away, and we're happy to answer any questions that you've got.
Andrew, there's a few questions come through. So there's kind of double-barreled one first. Which roles would you recommend for somebody with a BSc in psychology? They're not seeking a police constable role, but would like to know which other roles might be suitable for them. There's a second part to this, but I'll let you answer that one first.
I guess it's quite tough to sort of say which would be the best role. It's very individualised. Put it this way, I did a sports science degree, and I come into HR. I had no knowledge of HR prior to coming into it, but I've stayed in here now for nearly 3 years. So I'd say you need to find something that is what you want to do. It may be something like you want to utilise your degree, and that could probably be utilised within. I don't know what specifics you could look to go down or what you potentially want to go down, but there's always opportunities for you to utilise your degree within the police. So I've probably gone around from answering the question there, but just because we can't, if we were to say definitely go for this, it might not be a right ideal fit for you. It might not be something you enjoy. So always have that in the mind that it needs to be something that you actually want to do. And we do have an occupational health team as well. And we are looking at changing that into in-force. So we do look at counsellors. We have counsellors as well. So maybe potentially there could be something there that works.
If I could just jump in, it's Melissa here. I have a BSc in psychology, and again, not going to say exactly which role you should go for because I do think it needs to be an independent choice. Just something to be aware of, there are so many different staff roles within the constabulary. I've come into HR, into the recruitment team. I love the job that I do. It doesn't necessarily mean that someone with the same degree would. So one thing that I would advise is just to go onto our force website. If you just type in, I think we've linked it as well, but if you just type in Cheshire Careers into Google, it comes up straight away, Cheshire Constabulary Careers. And it just gives such a broad explanation of a couple of different roles. One thing to be aware of, we do have witness care support as well, something to be aware of. So that, yeah, there's just so many different roles, and I think have a little research, and again, make sure it's an independent decision. Obviously take advice from, a lot of different people around you, but like Andy said, it does need to be something that you would enjoy essentially. But yeah, even contact a couple of people you know that are already in the force even, get a couple of different advice. But yeah, also look on our careers page for lots of just different jobs that come up. There might be a job that you wouldn't have thought of, but it comes up on the career page. So yeah, just a bit of advice there.
Kind of second part, which is sort of related to that, was someone's living in London and would like to join the police in London. That presumably would be going through the Met, would it?
So there are two forces within London. So you have the Met, which is your main force, and then you also have the City of London as well. But yeah, if you are looking to join through there, just have a look on their careers website as well. It's a standard recruitment process to as a police constable is standard across all forces. It's set by the College of Policing and it's national guidance. There may be some tweaks between different forces. There might be something that Cheshire do that City of London or the Met don't do, and likewise vice versa. But just have a little familiarise yourself with their vacancies page and their website, just to see what it is that they actually do step by step going through them processes. Or again, it'll be on the competencies and values framework, your process. So just become familiarise yourself with that as well.
And you mentioned before the detective scheme had just closed. That's a national one, isn't it?
It was, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, unfortunately, we haven't been given any, because it's just closed. We haven't been given any information as to whether it's going to open again later in the year or next year. But it's just something we will, and we do promote all our vacancies online. So it's just an idea just to keep an eye out on, really.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
One thing
again,
as well,
like more gone.
Sorry. There on our force website, you can also put an expression of interest, and that comes directly to us. And it's for a lot of roles such as special constables. We've got one open for the fast track detective as well, police constable and PCDA. And what it is essentially, you'll send an email through to us, and we'll keep all your details on file. So as the roles and vacancies do reopen, we'll contact you to let you know that they're open, so you don't miss out on any opportunities as well. That's also something to consider if we don't have exact dates of when those recruitment drives will open at this time.
Okay, thanks, Melissa.
Carry on now.
Another question that's come through is for police staff roles. I've seen that you asked for a 2,000-word supporting statement with your application. What hints and tips would you give me to make a good one?
What I'd say is there should be a role profile attached to the job application. Have a look at the skills, the knowledge and experience section of that. I've just gone through one myself, and always provide examples. So like we were saying there, break down your examples that you're providing, and try and make it fit into what they're looking for. But don't just give like little buzzwords that are in the application, the role profile. Make sure you're actually evidencing what you're saying, so you're backing it up with examples. You're really going into detail. With 2,000 words, it does seem quite a lot, but it can happen. You can use them 2,000 words so quickly, and make sure you use all 2,000 words as well. you're going into that detail, you're going to need to use them all, and you're going to want to use them all as well to give you that best possible chance. What I'd say when you're completing your application, what I did, I had half my screen with my actual application, just typing it on Word. I'd say type it on Word or any other platform that is out there, rather than putting it onto trying to complete that little box on our vacancies page, because you can copy and paste it over rather than anything being lost or not saved on our vacancy on your application process. So you have it on Word and then just copy it and paste it over, or have half your words, have half the screen on Word and then half the screen with the competencies and values framework. It's 6 competencies, 4 values, and then you've got your cluster. So all form part of the wide understanding of the police and how we actually work and what we're looking for within the organisation. So if you can tick off bits of that as well as you're going through, don't just say, don't just copy and paste what's in there, but really just show you have that understanding of that. Also have a look at We Care. So again, on our Cheshire website, just familiarise yourself a little bit with We Care, and that'll give you a bit of an idea as to what the Chief Constable's objectives and priorities are within the force. It's a 2019 to 2020 document, but that is the most recent one that we have within force. Again, and maybe just do a bit of research as to what the role is and what the role potentially will involve you getting involved with. A lot of that will be on the role profile, but you can always have a little Google search and see what else is out there.
Thanks, Annie. That's great. A couple more questions come through. This is similar to the psychology one in some ways, and I guess you might answer it in the same way, but someone says, are the roles suitable for someone with a degree in history?
Yeah, again, exactly the same as psychology, the psychology question. I showed Melissa came in with a psychology degree. I've come in with a sports science degree. There's a lot of different ways and degrees that you can have and still be able to provide something different to the organisation within any role, really. But you've got to make sure it fits you and what you want to do as a person. It's no good us telling you what we think, because we're just going to probably promote HR, because that's what we do. But you've got to make sure it's right for you as an individual. And that's probably the best bit of advice we can really give, unfortunately.
Yeah, I had a friend who went into the police force as a constable with a degree in history, so I know that's a potential that someone could do. Next question is, I'm interested in HR. You mentioned that you work in HR. I was wondering if you are CIPD qualified and whether anything can be put in place by the organisation to get CIPD qualifications.
I am not CIPD qualified, and it is not a requirement to come into HR for the constabulary. I think it says that it's maybe a desirable qualification to have, but if you don't have that, it's not going to go against your application. I've been asked to complete CIPD, and I've not taken up the opportunity to complete that CIPD.
But you would be supported if you wanted to do it, is I guess what second part of that question.
Yeah, I was going to say then, so I was asked to do it, and the force would then support me through it, so they cover that CIPD, the cost through the apprenticeship levy. They cover that for me, so it'd be no cost for me. Or I know previous colleagues have done CIPD and then gone on to join as a police constable after they've completed it, but they've actually gone away and done that off their own back, the CIPD, so they've paid for it themselves and gone through the college to complete that. But yeah, not a requirement to join HR.
Okay, that's great. Thanks.
Say, if you are looking at HR, we are in the process of changing our systems, so there's likely to be opportunities available coming up. So just keep an eye out on the website.
That's great. Well, it looks like we've come to the end of our questions. I'll just wait for another few seconds, see if anything comes through, if that's okay, Andrew and Melissa. We'll give people another couple of seconds, see if anything else comes in.
Yeah, one thing I say is, I guess we have got the website, sorry, the email address on what you can see. If you've got any questions, you can always email us at that. If you think of something later down the line, you know, or you can't find one of the documents that we've mentioned, just drop us an email, and we'll come back to you as soon as we can, really, with that documentation or response to your questions.
That's fantastic. I've really enjoyed the session this morning. So I want to say thanks, Andrew, and thanks, Melissa. I've learned a few new things as well. I'm sure everyone else has had a great experience, and there'll be questions firing into you over the next few days. So many thanks for that.
Thanks a lot for having us.
That's great. It's been great.
Yeah,
fantastic. Thanks very much.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take
Bye.
care. All the best.